Hey YouTube, welcome back. It's Biz here from the Casual Athlete. I'm solo today. Longy's left me on the altar. He's out partying in the Gold Coast. Also, no Tommy Talau photo to start this week, but I'll do the post for you guys. Hey, Tommy Talau, speaking of Tommy Talau, big 47 points. Not many people saw that coming. I personally took Tommy Talau scoring 47 points as a sign that everything in life was as it's meant to be. And I proposed to my long-term girlfriend on the weekend. Now my angry girlfriend, who is annoyed that I spend too much watching football, is now my angry fiance. So big life update from me. Hopefully I can still record and watch football like I usually do, but who knows? I could have some problems there. But anyway, this week's buy hold, so let's get right into it. Longy's busy. I'm quite busy this week, so I'll just fly through these names. A lot of these names have been coming up over the last couple of weeks, but they're really firming. And I think the most interesting section of this week is going to be the cows section. All of a sudden, we didn't have great cows to start the season, but the cows are coming in hot now. Which ones are the traps? There's quite a few, but we'll discuss them. But let's start off with the buy category. So Angus Crichton. So we talked about him for a couple of weeks now. I think he's the one. A lot of our questions regarding his minutes were answered. Yes, Satili went off after a couple of minutes with a bad head knock, but the most encouraging thing about Angus is a couple of things. The first thing for me is that Nat Butcher came off at the 60-minute mark before Angus. And the way I've talked about it before, the way the Roosters rotation currently works is they generally have one 80-minute guy and one rotating second rower. So Butcher, who I thought would be the 80-minute guy, went off at 55, 60 minutes. So Angus was primed to play 80 anyway, or at least 65, 70. So that looks really good for him. And two, he played really, really well. His work rate was fantastic. He passed the eye test. He was breaking tackles. He was defensively pretty solid. And thirdly, just fantasy output-wise, his PPM is starting to creep back towards what it was. And the promising thing is, in his reserve grade game this year, he also scored 70 points in 80 minutes. So he's still 513K. That's actually wrong. I don't think it's 513K. Let me quickly check his price because I actually think he's like 477K. So I actually think I put that in wrong. I know some snarky viewers want to say that in the comments that I've messed that up. But he is 477K. There you go. His break even is 10. So get on him. I think he's pretty much a must-have. He's the most traded in guy this week. Alongside Carl Iro. So, yeah, don't question that one. Get on him. Hey, if he fails, well, the smart idea was to get him in case he goes big because we have seen his pedigree. The next guy. So the next few guys, I think this is the week where there's so many cows, you can actually cash down a mid-ranger and upgrade the other to a gun. So who are the good guns I like? A couple of pods here. I really like David Fifita. He started the season coming back from injury rock solid. Like he's still scoring close to 60. He hasn't had any big busting tries or big attacking stats yet. So this is kind of his floor. He's lost a bit of money, but his break-even is still 63, which is probably what his average is when he plays 80 minutes. He came off the bench last week, but he still got big minutes. 1.3% ownership. Like, I'm loving this. Like, yeah, yes, he'll play Origin, but he's the type of guy who could bust out 100. You're one of 1% of coaches that own him, your rank's going to fly. And no one's really talking about him. I've always loved David Fifita. He is super consistent when he gets the big minutes. Last year, up until Origin, he had scored at least 60 every game. So he's priced now at about 58, 59, 60. So he's a great pod for you. The next one, DCE. Now, we talked about him a couple of weeks ago. I was really high on him. I didn't pull the trigger because I just had too many fires with injuries and suspensions to put out. But back-to-back big scores. And he's got the Gold Coast Titans this week. Now, I'm getting to Sean Johnson shortly, but, you've got Cleary and you've got Hines, who are the tier ones. A lot of people are saying, are Cleary and Hines really that much better than these next guys? They haven't really shown that yet, but I still think Cleary and Hines are like a significant tier ahead the rest of the halves. And you saw Cleary last year. He started the season really slow, but these guys just rack up big score after big score, kind of like Cherry's doing this year where he started slow, but a couple of big 80-plus scores in a row, and his average is right back up there now. I think Hines and Cleary will still average close to 70 to end the year. Hines hasn't really had any great attacking stats, but he's still averaging 60-plus, so I expect that to creep up. But so DC and Sean Johnson, but DC is a guy who's lost about 100K. He's got the Titans this week. His ownership is less than 10%, so he's a big pot, whereas Sean Johnson is 20. So I actually think I'd rather punt on Cherry Evans if I needed the money, but then maybe I'll skip Isaiah. I'll come back to the Warriors attack. Now, if you look at the Warriors draw, it is amazing leading into round 13. They've got the Dragons, the Titans, the Tigers, like the Knights, the Roosters, like a bunch of weak defensive teams who they could totally shred apart. So I look at that and I think, guys like Sean Johnson, Wade Egan, even Charles Nicholl-Klokstad looks like he's taken a step up this year in terms of work rate. But then also like Adam Fanua-Blake, etc., who can score a try and like is a big attacking stat prop. I really like them. Like if I could squeeze in Egan, Sean Johnson, these guys, they could get on a really like Sean Johnson's already started a hot run. He's already coming off back-to-back big scores. But this dude could like legitimately average 75, 80 over the next 5 rounds because if you look at his draw, there's nothing stopping him from just racking up attacking stats. So that's kind of Warriors attack as a whole. And we did speak about DC and Sean Johnson last week as well. So we were right there, but it's still time to get them in because they're still below what they started the year at. So you're still getting them at a discount. And particularly DC, I think the last 2 weeks, Brooks is kind of taking a step back. DC is taking control again, like 500, 600 kick meters. Love to see it as a potential DC owner or an existing DC owner. And the last one is Isaiah Yeo. Again, under the radar. He's just had his bye. Yes, he'll definitely play Origin, but that's still 6 weeks away, right? So, like in 6 weeks, you can get a guy who isn't that highly owned. He's not quite a pod, but he's not. He's 15.7%. So there's borderline between kind of going from pod to common territory. But this is a really reliable pick, a captain option. While Cleary's out and Hines isn't rock solid this year as of yet. So I really like Isaiah as an option this week. He's expensive, but he's a guy who's always 60, 65, 70. A couple of times he'll creep to 55, but he's a great scorer and he's going to play big minutes while Cleary's out. So that's a bias for this week. I think they're all interesting. Like I said, the more interesting slide for this week is actually going to be our Cals, and there's a lot of them. There's a couple more on this list like Waddell, etc., Jai Gray, who aren't as relevant for this week at least, and I'll talk about why. But going through them one by one, Kale Iro, I think I'm saying that wrong, so I apologize for that. And I'll make sure I get the pronunciation right next time. But he's passing the eye test. Huge ownership, but I think a lot of that ownership is actually from inactive coaches who just got a red dot at the start of the year. And now that'll creep up. He's had 2 back-to-back 40-plus scores or 40-odd scores. He has played really well. And actually, when I heard the reports of Kale coming through the grades, I thought he was more of a flamboyant, attacking stat type of guy. And he is, but what I love is his work rate. He looks for the ball consistently. He runs the ball a lot. Really interesting comments from Craig Fitzgibbon saying that they like Talakai's flexibility, and Talakai understands why they've moved him to the bench to allow for Iro to come into the team. So it sounds like it's his spot to lose. And with the Sharks playing so well this year, like they keep winning, and Iro's playing really well. He might keep that spot at 318K. He's still worth the punt, and he is shown that he could be almost a keeper for a lot of the year. So let's see how that goes. Also, I'm hearing a lot of white noise from my mic, so let me try and diagnose that. Okay. If it's still going, sorry. I apologize. Chevy Stewart, he also looked 200 meters last week, only 26 points against the Titans. But he looks good. The Raiders continue to win. I think he'll keep his spot. I think he's a great cash-out option this week. You don't even have to play him. Just sit him at the back end of your bench. You could loop him potentially. He seems like a guy who might have 20s, 25s, but he's active enough in a good enough team that he can score tries. He averages about 38, I think 48 this year in the reserves and 38 last year. So he has shown that he can score pretty decently. But for me, he's just a great cash-out option. And if he gets some big scores, good enough. And he'll play round 13 potentially if Rapana isn't back by then. Kieran Foran, now this is an interesting one. Big 70-point performance last week. Very risky, but real high upside. And why is there a lot of upside in Foran? This is probably the first time in his career he's the senior half with a kicking role. He's obviously been the senior half for a while now. But last week, 600 odd kick meters. Put it into perspective. Last year, Kieran Foran in 80-minute games, which is another thing I'll come back to, but he doesn't play that many 80-minute games because he's quite injury prone. But 80-minute games, 32 average with 100 kick meters a game. Jaden Campbell and Brimson last week in the halves and the fullback spot were not kicking the ball. So if I look at Tanner Boyd's kick meters over the last year or so, about 450 meters a game. So Foran takes on all of that, and he goes from 100 kick meters a game to 450 kick meters a game. That's incremental of 350 kick meters, which is 11 extra points. So if you add 11 to 32, there you go. You're in the mid-40s already. He's priced at 28, so he's already getting 15 points of value. Now, as a halfback, you're also likely touching the ball more. You might get a few more assists. Like last week, he got 2 try assists, 2 line break assists, 70 points. Yes, he made 35 odd tackles. That's not going to happen every week, but he does like to tackle for a half. He usually tackles over 20 times a game. Does love a miss as well. So there's a chance here you're getting a 40-45 player who's still priced at 28, who could make you a lot of money quickly. And like I said, hasn't been much cash generation this year. So this could be a chance to make some cash. Now, the negatives of Kieran Foran is that Philip Sami's at fullback this week. Not a guy who's played a lot of fullback. He has played there before, but Tanner Boyd could come back. Brimson could go to fullback and Boyd back in halves. And Campbell's out for 4 weeks, so that's an option for the next 4 weeks. And if Foran goes back to 6, you're using one trade to get him in, one trade to get him out. Not much upside. He does have a tougher draw. He's got Manly, his old team this week, so it could be a revenge game and another big score. But then he's got, I believe, the Warriors and the Storm in back-to-back games. Tough matchup. They're both really good teams. He might score okay, but they might get smashed, and then Tanner Boyd comes back in. Is he worth the punt? If you've got trades and your team's doing well or your team's doing really bad and you've got nothing to lose, probably like mine right now, maybe get him in. I'm still thinking about it. He's kind of almost it's a bit uncharted territories. He played 2 games at halfback in 2022 at Manly, and he averaged 36 with about 300 kick meters. So has shown that he could be a 40-plus guy. The problem is the Titans just aren't that good this year, but improving signs last week. So let's see how it goes. On the flip side, if Titans aren't doing too well, he might find more burner on him to do more, which might lead to more stats. So that's Kieran Foran. Trey Fuller, we don't even know what price he is. He's named at fullback. I assume he's coming in at 230K, but he could get 4 to 5 weeks for Hamiso, potentially more, because if he plays well, Dolphins play both major bye rounds, and that means Hamiso, who is definite for Origin, if he's fit. So he might get 2 more games in round 13 and the other bye rounds they play. Trey Fuller, is he worth the risk? They've got options, right? They've got Tessie New, who's played fullback before. They've got Isako, who can move to fullback. They've got a bunch of backs who just could fill in multiple places. They've got Nick Arima that can play there. They've got Anthony Milford who can play there. Trey Fuller is a 27-year-old debut time. The last time I heard 28-year-old debut time was Jacob Gagai, week 1, Vegas. Played a good game, scored a good try. Hasn't been since, even though he's playing well. What I like about Trey Fuller, reserve grade stats, last 3 years, 50-plus average in all 3 years. He's played 6-7 years at reserve grades. He's always been in the high 40s, low 50s over the last few years. So he could be a really good scorer if he keeps his spot. They've got the Eels this week, who are not very good defensively this year. And Trey Fuller, I won't lie, I've never seen him play. He could be anything, right? So, he could come out and score 50 straight away. He could score 20. I mean, the thing is, you've seen guys who average really well in New South Wales Cup or Queensland Cup not translate. Like Keeney averaged 50-plus in the Host Plus Cup, and he came out and he was terrible in fantasy. Solomon Ftape, he averages 45 in knock-on effect, and he can barely get past his break-even at base price. So who knows? Jai Gray averaged close to 50 in New South Wales Cup, but he actually came and he looked like he was on track for a 50 without the HIA. So it does translate sometimes, right? So maybe you can wait a week because his base price, you can see how he goes. But I just might use him for cash. Again, like Stewart, if he sits on the back of my bench, it's okay. But the fantasy pedigree is there. He's playing a Dolphins team that's playing pretty well. and do rely on their fullback a lot. Like they're very Hamiso dependent. So if he plays a similar role, could be in for good scores. I don't know anything about him. So if you know anything about him, please put it in the comments, educate us. Really looking forward to seeing him play. And he'll probably be in my team. So hopefully he does well. I might loop him in, right? I might use a Piacora or someone to use him as a loop. And if he scores 50 plus, I might use him over a Salmon or a Hughes, for example. And then Chester, he got the dual position this week, makes him more interesting. Scored a good try last week. I said in the chat, any center or winger is going to score a try on the Eels. They're just edge defense is just laughable. He scored a try. 44 points, so 35 and 44 in centers. Cowboys look great. Not in defense, so there's a lot of shootout potential, which is good for Chester, right? But he looks like he could be a good scorer, dual position, still priced below 400K. He's a great option. They play around 13 and a pretty friendly draw up until then. So not much more to say. I think he could be a mid-30s guy, and he's still a bit of a discount to that price, covering that dual position and plays around 13. So I think that's all positive traits. If you need that kind of profile in your team, I wouldn't hesitate too much. They do have Vilea, a couple others who can fill that in, but he looks like he's playing well. The hold, look, I'll run through the holds this week. I don't think there's any like that. I'm probably not telling you anything that you don't already know. Murray, look, he's probably the most borderline one here. He's just not doing that well. He's played edge a bit. He had to cover for center for a bit. He got a HIA. He's now below his starting price, which was already a discount for his potential. In my eyes, he's pretty much a buy now. Like next week, I could in 1 week or 2 weeks, he's got a high break even, but in another week I might buy him. So I don't know why you would sell him. I think at his price now, he's worth holding on to. Yes, he's got Origin coming, but I still think there's 5-6 more good scores you could potentially get out of him. He could still average 60, 65 over that period. So if you don't need his money this week, I would potentially hold him. Hines, look, you're just keeping Hines all year. Like people are saying that he's just not the same. Like he's fine. Like his tackles are up there with last year. His kick meters are up there with last year. I'm not too sure why Trindle kicked more last week. Maybe he was carrying injury, but prior to that game, Hines actually had more kick meters than last year. Just hasn't had those tries and as many try assists. Like just a bit of a form slump. But we're seeing with Cherry Evans and Sean Johnson, right? Like they start the year slow, but bang, it just takes one game to click them into gear. And Hines has still got 275s this year, right? So he's a 50, 75, 50, 75, 53, maybe 80 this week. So let's see. Hopefully he's my captain. So hold him. Don't trade him unless he's injured or suspended. Joe Chan, low break even, right? Like he's off the bench this week. I'm expecting him to score 5 to 10 points. I think he'll play 20 minutes, right? But the thing is, he didn't increase in value that much. He's 295K, so you can't really cash him out too crazy unless you go to a Trey Fuller, like I mentioned. So you might as well hold him. And the reason I say that is because it's the same argument with Talani, right? Like they might play small minutes of the bench this week, but we've seen in fantasy injuries happen, HIAs happen, suspensions because of hip drops and crushes and stuff happen. They could all of a sudden be there next week for you, right? And you've sold them a week earlier. Like, there's no pending need to sell these guys. They're not like they don't have high break even. It's not going to lose you too much money. Like even if they play 10 minutes, they might probably still hit their break even, right? And then you can reassess. But with Chan and Talangi, like you just, maybe next week they've got a big role. Maybe, the Eels, for example, Harper, Simonson, they've not, like other than Penasini and Gutho, that back five, like none of them have done enough to really hold down a spot for good, for sure, right? So we saw Sivo get dropped already. So Blaze seems like the next guy in. He's not going to play half again. I think Brad Arthur said he's not going to be a half for us here, but they'll use him, right? They'll use him as bench impact. If he plays really well, our centers or wingers don't play well, he might be on the center again like he started. So same with Joe Chan, like, Blore could cover HIA or Katoa, or they might integrate Chan into the middle rotation with Kamitha out. So just hold this week potentially unless you really need that money or that roster spot. And then Reece Robson, 53.8 average or something, 42 last week. Like, don't worry too much. He's going to have ups and downs. But he's only averaging 1 point below Grant, who's apparently the premium hooker. Come on, Grant. I need you to get those premium scores, bro. I need like one of those 75-plus scores. Yeah, that's the holds. And then firing through the cells, it's always just my team, pretty much. Danny Levi, he's peaked, sub-20 score. Man, thank the Lord. Like, this guy was a try-scoring machine, and he barely made you 100K. I had him, but, thanks, Danny Levi. You've done your job. Adios, my friend. You'll be out of the team. Burbo, look, 3-week injury, history of hamstring issues, both him and his brother. Sell, like they say 3 weeks, could be 4, right? He's also peaked, like his break even is kind of at that spot where he averages. So don't sit on him. Off you go. Hutchison, as an owner, very surprised Bulldogs persist with Hutch. He's a great toiler. Is he what they need at halfback right now? Probably not. I'd get Sexton in there ASAP. There must be something Hutch does that I just don't pick up. Like, he's a big body. He defends okay. He works really hard. But Sexton just seems a class above. But what am I? Like, I don't know the Bulldogs enough to make that call. But it is strange to me. I think a lot of the Dogs fans are also weirded out. But it doesn't matter. So he's my first one sold this week. He's kind of didn't do as well as I hoped. He just had less of a role than I expected. He somehow did more at the Roosters, or at least Roosters made him look better fantasy-wise than he is. So Tilly, enough said. Like, just there was 20% ownership to start the year. I was one of them. One of the most dud starts. Like, what can you do? Like, he got the minutes, still scored poorly, and he didn't get the minutes. And then some people held him just for the sake of holding trades. Got like 2 points. Anyway. He could be a buyer later in the year. Like, for example, if he comes back with a starting role, he lands a 60, 70, 80-minute role at 350K, you can do it. And then Hosking, I hate to say it, but crazy hot start to the year. It's come back now. It just hasn't worked out for him. A couple back-to-back injury weeks. Could be out for the season. Could be out for 5-6 weeks. Either way, he's a sell. Very low ownership, but I thought I'd put him out there anyway, just as a homage to the highest score of the first few weeks. A couple of names I missed that I should talk about. Corey Riddell. Burbo is 3 weeks. So a trade in and a trade out of a guy like Corey Riddell. I think he is severely underpriced. Just the thing is, if it's only 3 weeks, like, you're using 2 trades for 70, 80K, maybe 100K, but he's also got a bit of a negative score in him sometimes. Like, I'm not saying -5 as an overall score, but like 40 tackles, 7-8 missed tackles, and he only gets 30, and that kind of halts the pricing. So I'll skip him. If you guys want him, take a punt. If you've got if you guys have been banking trades and you can afford to use 2 trades on Waddell, go for it. I think he's going to be a good 40+ scorer for a few weeks, but that's probably where it ends. And the other one, like we kind of touched on, Jai Gray. I think he'll be a buy next week. Dimitri has come out and said that the fullback spot could be his if he continues to play well, and that Latrell could go to centre. Look, Souths have been doing terribly, right? They kind of asked. They need a change. So maybe Jai Gray, who looked really good last week, comes back if he's named at fullback next week. The only problem is they've got Penrith and Melbourne the next couple of weeks. So, it could be tough for him. But I think at his price, it's worth a punt as well, especially, like I said, with limited cash generation this year. And the last one, Adam Mariota, 330K. I'm pretty interested in him. He had a big score last week. Big pedigree, big raps on him coming out of Canberra. Hosking's gone. Whitehead, I think he's actually back around 8 or 9. So the Whitehead injury is really strange. Like, it kind of comes out of the blue. Like, you don't see him get injured on the field. Like, even week 1, like, he was injured out of the blue, right? Like, not on the park. And so I'm actually thinking, is this like a cover-up conspiracy? Or is he genuinely injured, right? But apparently the casualty ward has him round 8 or 9, which is next week or the week after. So Mariota's probably not good enough to bring in if it's only 1 or 2 weeks. But if it comes out, if you see later in the week that Whitehead is out for 4 to 5 weeks, Mariota, like 340K low break even for 1. He's a guy I'd look at for sure, especially with the Raiders playing so well and really reliant on their forward pack. So there's another name we didn't have on there just because Whitehead potentially might be there. But that's it for buy, hold, sell this week. Longy, look, I hope you're having a great party. Man, like, I hope I'm good enough for you guys, So no Longy, I know you guys love him, but hey, show me some love, yeah. Hey, Tommy Talau. But look, best of luck for this week. Content will be a bit slower just given that we're all kind of wrapped up this week, but we're always trying to get you content as much as you can. Rob was also tied up, so couldn't get him on. Lockie's got great articles on our website, so look out for those. But otherwise, great playing fantasy. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next buy, hold, sell next week. Catch up.